we need your help, but I think our guest is here. How are you, sir? Outstanding. I'll send you mine right there. Perfect. Yes, sir. You can get comfortable. Our guest has arrived at large City Councilor Henry Santana, and we're so pleased to know that he's not a stranger here. He's been to Boston Praise. He has been here on Boston Praise Radio and TV Network on numerous times, but we're so grateful that he's taken time to be able to catch us up with what's happening in this, post this election, right? Congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone who came out and supported my campaign for re-election last November, and we're hitting the ground running in second term.
This is your second term?
Second term.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That is amazing. So talk a little bit about, the campaign, because it's interesting. There were many people who ran. I'm not sure off the top of my head, how many people did you have that were running for at large? I think they were like...
There was 9 originally, and past the preliminary, there was 8 of us.
Okay.
Vying for 4 spots.
So that's amazing, right? That you were able to do that with so many people that put their hat in the ring, that were looking to be able to do that, and that you were able to maintain your seat. And so it's interesting for the 4 at-large city councilors. I know that there were, there was only one in the whole election of even the districts, right? There was only one person who was added to the slate of incumbents.
Absolutely. Yeah, so there was an open seat in District 7, so we knew there was going to be at least one new person, definitely from District 7, and all 4 incumbents at large got reelected, and all the other district councilors also got reelected. So we have a body that 12 of us are very familiar with each other, and obviously Councilor Culpepper, who's joining from District 7, is also hitting the ground running and doing good work.
Amazing. So talk a little bit about the campaign. Let's back up and talk about the campaign with so many people vying for that seat. So give us some an update with how was it campaigning?
Yeah, so first, what I will say is that campaigning is so different from the actual job as a city councilor, right? I think they're two different jobs, and it was my first time running for re-election. Obviously, I had done one term, but I think running for the first time, a few years ago, you really have nothing to lose, right? You introduce yourself to the city of Boston. Historically, you've been able to see that an at-large councilor, sometimes it takes multiple times to get in, and so when I ran for the first time, I just wanted to get my name out there. My story, I thought would resonate with a lot of people, and obviously the work that I've been able to do in my young career. But you have nothing to lose. You work hard, and you go to every single neighborhood, and I was very fortunate to have Boston elect me as one of their 4. Now the second time, it's a little different because, again, when you're running for the first time, you don't have a track record, right? You don't have votes that you've taken. You don't have, you don't have a track record. Now, when you're running for re-election, you do have a track record of the work that you've done, and people vote based off that. So it was just, and you also are a city councilor still, right? So there's still a job to do. Obviously, we're living in very scary times right now. With everything that's going on the federal level. So, running for re-election, I knew that I had to do the work as a city councilor during the day and campaign in pockets of time that I can. And there's a level of, obviously I'm a competitive person, but I'm a hard worker, and I really love this city, and really felt that the work. I wasn't a perfect city councilor my first 2 years. There's a learning curve. There's a lot of learning. But I also knew that I felt that I started a lot of, I was able to make some impact on youth jobs, on public safety, being able to chair the public safety committee. Was able to do a lot of work with Superintendent Skipper and our schools. So I felt very confident in the work that we started, and I was asking the residents of Boston to give me another 2 years to continue doing that work.
So let's back up. So you talk a little bit about your story for those who may not know you, right? So educate us about your story that preceded you becoming a city councilor. The impetus for you even to do that.
Yeah. So I was a kid who was born in the Dominican Republic. Came to Boston at the age of 3, so I grew up in the city of Boston. I landed in Mission Hill. I'm a proud product of our public housing, Alice Taylor BHA apartment out there, where my family still resides. And so I always say I'm a city kid. I'm a product of our public housing. I'm a product of our public schools, and grew up with 2 older brothers, 1 younger sister. Very strict immigrant, if anyone who has immigrant parents, right, had very strict immigrant parents who were just trying to get by, right, putting food on the table, and all they stressed to us growing up was to value our education. I have 2 parents who, one finished their education in middle school in the Dominican Republic, and my father got to go to high school and never did anything after that. So they knew the value of education. That's why they came to this country, to provide a better life for their children. And I took school very seriously, and really loved it. And growing up in a community like Mission Hill, I feel like I really got lucky. It was a community that we look out for one another, and I think there's so many different parts of Mission Hill, but when you grow up there, everyone knows you're from there, and everyone's kind of familiar with, even if they don't know you, they're familiar with your face. And I was really lucky to grow up in a community like Mission Hill, and really fell in love with that community, to the point where I was giving back and serving in different capacities as, director of the Mission Hill Summer Program, volunteered at the after school program. I ran the mentoring program out there, and a lot of youth work, a lot of community work. And that brought a passion for me for community, and wanting to get things fixed and wanting to see others, get by. Because that's what we were, in public housing, that's what you're doing, right? You're trying to get by and trying to reach another level. So that's my story of just being able to grow up in that community. Once I graduated from college, I graduated with a history degree and a political science minor. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and was able to meet she was a candidate at the time, but she was running for District 8 City Councilor Kenzie Bach. She's now running the BHA. She's the administrator over at BHA right now, and got to help her in her campaign and get involved. And when she won that campaign, she invited me to join her city council office. And that was just an introduction to me of just like City Hall.
Sure.
And I was just trying to, again, work hard, do the right thing, but also being able to work at City Hall, you get to meet a lot of different people. And one of those people was our current mayor, but she was an at-large city councilor back then, Michelle Wu, and was able to form a relationship with her, very settled, nothing major. But when she won her first election for mayor, the administration gave me a call, and they were familiar with the work that I've done with Kenzie's office, and they were familiar with the work that I've done in Mission Hill, and a lot of organizing, right? And they offered me a role as the inaugural director of civic organizing for the city of Boston, and being able to run that office. And it was my first time in a citywide role, being able to focus on all the neighborhoods across the city, neighborhoods, honestly, that, I grew up in Roxbury, right? So it's very easy to not, go to West Roxbury or go to Brighton or go, around the city. And in that role, my job was to be in every single neighborhood, and got to learn a lot about the different neighborhoods and see how city politics from the administration side looks like. And again, I think just my story, immigrant, black man, grew up in public housing, currently a renter, right, in the city of Boston. I saw myself, I saw many people having that same story across the city, and From being the inaugural director of civic organizing, I did something that I think many people called crazy at the time, which was throw my hat in the race for an at-large city council seat when there was no opening. Right, all four incumbents at the time when I announced were running for re-election, and I think everyone who's familiar with how I got in, Michael Flaherty, who was the longest lasting at-large city council at the time, he stepped down, right, and that opened up a seat, and that's when the campaign, we were in a good position for our campaign to grow. And then I think people, also residents, because there was an open seat, they were invested of who was going to take that open seat. So, it's thinking back about it, it's all gone so fast. I feel like I was just in high school and in college. But I think that's what this city needs: young leaders who want to be, aren't perfect, right? None of us are,
No.
But who really care about the city, who are courageous enough to be able to serve during this time. And I remember growing up, our elected officials were like idols, at least to me, right? Being able to see Tito Jackson and Jeff Sanchez and Mike Ross, who was a rep in Mission Hill. We're not living in those times right now, and people are looking at us to do the work, make their lives better, right? Housing, public safety, our education, and I think I bring a lived experience that's unique to the city council. I'm one of the youngest. I'm one of two that grew up in public housing, and I think I represent a lot of people who share that same story in the city of Boston.
That's amazing, brother. And you said a few times you are a young man. We can see that. How young man are you? What is your age?
I feel old now. I just turned 30 a few months ago.
That feels old.
The 20s are behind me. But I am currently 30 years old.
Are you the youngest city councilor on the city council?
One of the youngest. Enrique Pepin from District 5 is, I think, a year younger than me.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So, as you said, that's an amazing story to get you and with connections and serving and so forth, and that resonated with people, and you were able to, from that, to actually get, that opening. And how many people were running for the at-large city council at that time that Michael Flaherty vacated the seat? Do you know?
8 of us.
8.
So it didn't require a preliminary, right? So preliminary, obviously you vote in September, and then 8 move on. So because we had 8 already,
Yep.
there was only one election, the general election. There was 3 incumbents running for re-election, and then there was 5 of us who were new candidates at the time. One of them who had ran was second time running, right? And all the other. Me, myself, and the other 4 or the other 3 were new candidates for running for the first time. So both times has been competitive. I think I even just thinking back, my first time, I had to leave my job with the city, right, as the inaugural director of civic organizing, and I thought I had enough savings to make it through the election, and 2 months in, rent has to be paid, food has to be paid, right, and all that. So I ended up having to take I worked overnight during my first campaign, doing concierge and security, and campaign during the day. And it feels like it was just yesterday, but I'm glad it wasn't. But it was a journey, and I think that, again, having to work multiple jobs, having to do an overnight job, that's a story of many Bostonians, right?
Absolutely.
And that shouldn't be the reality, right? One job should be enough, but that's not reality. So I think people seeing me having to work overnight, campaign during the day, find pockets of time to sleep, right? And I think that resonated with a lot of people, and also I think it showed people the work ethic that I was going to be bringing onto the city council.
That's amazing. With that said, so in your first term, you said you got a learning curve. So what would you say talk about your first term, talk about your experience, talk about some of the things you were able to, some of the chairs that you were on, some of the things you were able to do, and some of the lessons that you learned, and maybe some mistakes that you feel that you made.
Yeah, I think, again, I've since college, right? Since graduating college, I've been in City Hall, so I was familiar with how systems worked, how to get things moving, how slow sometimes processes can be,
Bureaucracy.
and all of that, right? So I was familiar with that, and because I was familiar with that, I thought I was campaigning. I'd be ready on day one to deliver, and there's just a lot of other pieces that you have to consider, right? Your loyalty is to the residents of Boston and the people who elected you, but then you also are part of a body of 13, 9 district councilors, 4 at large, and you can't do anything on the city council alone. Absolutely nothing, right? So, you need to be able to work with your colleagues. You need to have you want to have majority or super majority in the things that you want to be able to bring up, and that there's obviously where checks and balances to the mayor's administration, but there's also, we live in a city where it's a very mayor run city, right? And the mayor has a lot of power. So being able to, also have those relationships with the administration and collaboration is extremely important. And I've just never been in a position where any move you make, the public is there watching, right? Even when I was working as for the administration or for the city council, it wasn't my name out there, right? So you do the work, but you're working for someone else. And as a city councilor, you're in charge of your schedule. You're in charge of bringing on, building a staff that's reflective of the city, who's going to work hard. And obviously, there's a lot of votes, decisions that are made, things that you either want to support or oppose. And very quickly, I found out that you're not going to please everyone. But you have that sense of, right, like when you come in, you want to, right?
Sure.
I think that's natural. You want to do a good job. You want to be able to, make people, the residents who supported you, people who didn't support you, want to be able to represent them, right? And very quickly, any decision you make, you're probably going to upset 50% of the people, and people let you know, right? People let you know in person. People let you know via our phones and social media, and I really needed to. I knew that I ran for this position, so I knew what I was walking into. But when it happens to you in real time, the scrutiny or the praise, whatever the case may be, it affects people in different ways. And that was just a learning curve for me, just being able to, again, like, really think about why did I do, like, why did I run in the first place, right? The values that my parents insisted in us having, and being able to apply those to the decisions you're making, and try to do the best and make the best decision for the city of Boston, right? I'm an at-large councilor. I represent the entire city, so I try to look at that from that lens of, does this decision better Boston? Is it good for the most residents? Is it, who is it good for? Who is it bad for? Right. So, and at the beginning, whenever decisions like that came, because I was new, as you get more and more into this position, you get to know more people. You get to know more, community leaders and residents. And now, before any making a decision, you have your people that you talk to in different neighborhoods. But at the beginning, you're starting and you're growing that. Tough decisions happen and are made. And again, that was just a big learning curve for me. But I felt like I had a great first term. I was tasked with chairing the Education Committee, and tasked with chairing the Public Safety and Criminal Justice Committee. And those are two major committees that I don't think typically a first-term counselor will get, or at least both of them, right? There's a lot of hearings and that are filed. Obviously, BPS is its own thing. I attended BPS, right? And our facilities need improvements. Our teachers need support. We have so many students that are on different, IEPs and different needs, right? Language barriers, we have over, a little bit over 10% of our students who identify as unhoused, right? So there's a lot of problems and issues within BPS. And again, you come in like, I'm a BPS kid. I know this. I saw I went through it. My siblings went through it, and you think you know all the solutions, or at least the pathways through those. But then you meet. I was sitting down with a superintendent, on a bi-weekly basis, monthly basis, and you just learn so much. You learn about, if you've cut funding for this and improved that, this is how it affects this, right? So there's a lot of learning. And a lot more access to information that you just don't get as a public resident, right? So, our focus was, when I first ran, I said, I'm going to focus on our youth. I felt like I got, really lucky, being able to come from Mission Hill, Alice Taylor BHA Apartments, being able to, go attend college, being able to land a job at a city council office, being able to land a job with the mayor's administration. And that just wasn't the case for even my siblings that I grew up with, right, in terms of those opportunities. And it wasn't the case for my neighbors and people that I went to school with. So, even though I felt really lucky, that just shouldn't be the case. I think if you work hard, if you do the right thing, if you find what you're passionate about, you should be able to work hard and be able to grow. I really want, that's a very, it's not the reality right now, but that's what I'm fighting for. So that way, every youth, no matter where you come from in the city, if you work hard and you do the right thing, there's opportunities for you to be able to grow and stay here in the city of Boston. And again, I mean, you've probably seen it, right? How many young professionals like myself, how many families, how many seniors have been pushed out of the city because of lack of opportunity, because of how unaffordable it can be, because of, you name it. And I'm someone that I want to stay here. I love this city. This city gave me and my family everything. I want to be able to own a home here. I want to be able to raise a family here. I don't have any kids right now. I'm not married, but those are things that, I hope to do in my 30s. And the reality is that many people who look like me, who grew up in similar positions like me, don't see that as an actual destination for them. They don't see themselves actually being able to own a home here. They can think about it and dream about it, but then when you go and see how much a home or how much homes are going for right now, and how much you're making, it doesn't add up, right? And so, as a city councilor, those are the people that that I'm bringing into the chamber with me. Those are the people that I want to be able to represent. And again, by no means does that mean I'm always going to make the right decision. But I'm extremely intentional when making decisions, because I know people can either benefit from it or be hurt by it.
With that said, I'm curious. So you said you were over the education. Correct. As well as public safety.
Correct.
With those two things, that with the incredible opportunity to chair that, right, in your first term, and with all the challenges that you've just articulated, right, and even where we stand now, right, where the Boston public school system is really having a lot of challenges, right? And let me ask you, what is your position with regard to the elected school committee? We know that it was overwhelmingly, people have spoken, right, in the petition, right, the ballot initiative. It was non-binding, but overwhelmingly people said they want a fully elected school committee like every other
municipality in Massachusetts.
Yes. However, that was not honored, right? And as you said, it's a very mayoral strong city. Right, so even when all the city council is saying that, the mayor chose not to hear that, and for many people, they felt that was tone deaf, and they're being engaged, and these are the things that make people feel cynical and feel like my vote doesn't matter. So, what is your position with regard? You were the chair. Correct. What is your position with regard to the full elected school committee and the fact that people, it was overwhelmingly, people said that's what they wanted, and that wasn't honored.
Yeah, so I mean, it's no secret. I'm in full support of the elected school committee. I've also supported a hybrid version, right? right now, again, majority of Bostonians support this. My job is to listen to Bostonians and to our residents, right? And I also, just on a personal level, support it as well. I think there's challenges to it. I also, we used to have an elected school committee, and trying to learn from those who were living, who were here during those times, and figure out what was good about that, what was bad about that, why did we go to an appointed school committee. But I'm in full support of either a fully elected school committee or some hybrid version as well, where some are appointed and some are elected.
Well, that's what we have now, is a hybrid.
No, we have a fully appointed.
Oh, fully appointed.
Yep.
Thank you for that clarity.
Yep. Yeah. The mayor gets to appoint the school committee. There are no elections, right? So no one's running for school committee here like we have in everywhere else here in Massachusetts.
Well, that's extremely problematic, because then it's exclusively loyal to the people whom actually appointed them, right? They don't have, it's not the people, right, who elected you, who their students are going, huh?
Absolutely. No, and that's what you hear, right? That's what you hear from people. And I think regardless of, I think you'd need, I think the majority of our city councilors support this. You'd need the mayor to be able to support this in order for it to move on as well.
Okay, let me go here. So with regard to public safety, right, another challenge that we have, the fact that the Office of Police Accountability and Transparency that our brother Jamal was very instrumental, along with others, being able to create. We now have Evandro Corvello is now the current. He just recently was here and gave an update with a report that he did. And with that said, there were a lot of fine. People felt heard, I guess, because this is now a place where you can speak and you have reports and so forth. But once again, the commissioner can say, no, I'm not responding to any of those kind of things. So it's kind of has no teeth. Yeah. Right. So these are the kind of challenges that we've really got to be able to address. So what is your position with regard to how, we can address that? But again, the fact that we haven't, it's progress, that we have accountability, but there is no accountability. Yeah. If ultimately is going to go here, and we've got a lot of folks, and I'll tell you, this is a kind of a side thing, because we understand that the commissioner is the head who was appointed by the mayor.
Correct.
So talk about that.
Yeah, so I think, it's very complicated, right? You just said it. We have an office now that's able to take these reports in, make people feel listened to, but if they have, if there's no avenue for them to actually create change, then people feel, well, what's the point of this, right? And I think that's what I'm currently hearing from some residents across the city of, how do we strengthen this office? How do we actually allow them to be able to do the work that they were created to do, right? And people don't feel right now that office, not because of the people in that office, right, but because of just the powers that you just you referred to, and I think that's a conversation that the city council needs to be able to pick up this term. And I'm blanking on the name, but I know one of the city councilors this past week did file a hearing order, and we will, I believe it was sent to my committee, so we will have a hearing where we're going to be able to hear from residents. We're going to be able to hear from the administration, and we'll also identify other people that we think that belongs in the conversation, and a conversation needs to be had. I was not part of the council when this office was created, but I was working with the administration when the office was created, and now being on the city council side, I want to be able to make sure that that this department is operates the way that the city council intended for it to happen, right? And as it currently stands, I don't think people feel that that's the case. And my job is to listen to those folks. And again, we will hold a hearing. We will make sure that we get the appropriate people in the chamber. I don't know the answers to that, right? I don't, because I think we need to learn about. I think we have an idea of what's going on, right? But I think we need to be able to look at the intricacies of this, and again, figure out as a council, not just myself, you need the majority of the council, right? how do we give this office and this department, again, to your point, the teeth to actually do the work that they were intended to do, and I think that will be happening, very soon over the next, in not a few weeks, a few months.
Amazing. I'll say, I have the opportunity to be a volunteer chaplain at the Nashua County Jail and the Suffolk County House of Correction. As you know, we do a lot of civic engagement. I work a lot around reentry. And with that said, unfortunately, there most recently was a death, Jacoby Kinney, right, at the hands of correctional officers in their custody and care. He could have been bailed out, didn't have the resources to get bailed out, and that's so much the case for our people that they don't have the bail. So he died in custody and care, in shackles. There were people who witnessed it, who were traumatized, who pointed out the officers and said, I saw you. There are officers who said that was wrong, right? With that said, they're still on the job, right? So and unfortunately, all the correctional officers are not even under OPAT. They're actually under the preview of the sheriff.
Yep.
Right. And unfortunately, the sheriff is going through his own challenges right now. So it's a very volatile situation, right? And it's perpetuating, right? Because I'm going in and I'm engaging them. And so Senator Miranda has created some legislation to have some oversight over correctional officers. So we need to support that piece of legislation. Absolutely. So my point is accountability, right, across the board, right? These grassroots movement, Black Lives Matters, right? These are things that were the impetus, Brother Jamal and so forth. That was the impetus of a groundswell of folks from the community who said, we need oversight. You can't kill someone in the street and be able to walk free. Why? Because you have a badge or because you're an officer, and that's behind the wall. Yeah. And this is a culture. Jacoby Kinney just really lifted, and he had some mental health challenges, but to die in shackles, right, in custody and care, and this is something that's happening. There's many deaths that have happened, and not to mention just people being paralyzed, being brutalized, right? And that's something that we've got. You should not be able to continue to show up on the job and continue to threaten folks. That's a gang. So these are things that we've got to be able to address. I know there's a statewide post, and our brother Larry Ellison is on that post, and that's another oversight on a state level, right? So we really, it's imperative for public safety, right? And not to mention now, let's layer that with ICE, right? And them coming in, and I appreciate most recently the mayor and city council did an executive order to be able to push back on that, talk about that executive order, because that's really new. And I don't know if you have any insight with regard to that, but I think there were even other mayors that stood. I just saw it recently on the news, and I appreciate that. But again, as we're addressing ICE, that's on the federal level, not to come, but we've also got to be able to address our own police and our correctional officers.
Yeah, so I mean, you just talked a lot of, I think first, when it comes to our prisons and our jails, no one, absolutely no one, who's in our, in that care should go through any abuse, and should definitely not go through any death, right? So, it was heartbreaking. I mean, I don't think people understand with, I think people do understand and maybe choose not to, right? With every person who's in there, there are family members, friends outside who are, supporting and who are loving, and it's insane what occurred, and we should be figuring out how that should never happen again. And that should, you mentioned mental, it doesn't matter if you have mental health issues. It doesn't, we all, right? It doesn't matter under what circumstances, no one should die under custody. And we need to figure out, again, I think our state senator, Liz Miranda, just given, the work that she's done, her background, she's really stepped up here. We're going to need her to continue to lead. And I'm very grateful for the work that she's doing, but we need to be able to support her. And obviously here at the local level, city council, her state colleagues need to be able to support that legislation. Again, one life loss is too too many, and we're not talking. You mentioned one, but there's more, right? And ones that maybe we don't read about or see, right? So that's. I need to do better as a public safety chair. I've been able to have. Be able to go and visit our prisons and, have relationships with, the sheriff's department and, the DA and, obviously our commissioner here. I think that there's a lot of communication happening, but action needs to happen.
And beyond that, and again, once again, right, the district attorney, who I appreciate, right, as well as the district attorney cannot do an independent investigation on the House of Correctional Officers when you're the same people who put them in there, right? You're not going to be, you can't police yourself. You can't. So we need an independent. There's people who are advocating for the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, to actually do this as a person who could be unbiased, right? To really be able to address not just his death, but the culture of violence and of death and of inhumane conditions that are treating people, and it's even worse now because people are pointing them out.
Yeah, I have zero tolerance for any of it. Zero tolerance, right? And again, we need to, we all need to take action and work towards making sure that never ever happens again. Again, I feel for obviously the lost life.
Yes.
But for the families who have to now carry that. And live that, right? And I've spoken to a few, of how hopeless they feel, right? And some, for some it's too late, right? I mean, it's not too late because we're thinking, but for that individual, they've already lost that loved one,
correct,
right? So it's very sensitive. I don't think it's controversial. Shouldn't be controversial, right? And there needs to be actually actions behind it, and we need our state leaders, our local leaders, to be behind protecting the life of people. And you mentioned ICE, and we've seen it. They've been in our communities, in our neighborhoods. Yep. Obviously, on the national level, we're seeing what's happening down in Minneapolis, what's happening in Maine, right? It's extremely, I don't even know the words, right? Someone yesterday in Rosendale was taken, right? And the community was able to rally, and I think that's where I'm focused on right now is, first, seeing legal services for the people who need it, right, and making sure that that's affordable. Mm-hmm. But then also the education piece. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of people who want to help, mm-hmm. And don't know what to do.
Right.
And being able to educate people on the roles that they can play. Mm-hmm. There's so many different roles, right? I put out a statement yesterday. I encourage anyone to go out to my social media or join my email list to see the organizations who are doing great work, the resources that are available. But right now, I'm a Dominican immigrant. I started this conversation by saying I came from the Dominican Republic. I was born in the Dominican Republic, mm-hmm. went through the immigration process here, mm-hmm. And became a permanent resident, became an American citizen, and it's a very long process. It's a very expensive process, one that I'm very grateful for. Mm-hmm. But it's just extremely scary times right now for all of us, our most marginalized, and especially our immigrant residents. And Boston is a city where it's a city for everyone. We've made that clear, and we need to continue to hold those values close to our heart. And I stand with our immigrant communities. Our immigrants bring so much to this city. Obviously, you have an elected official here, but business owners, teachers, police officers, you name it. They're in every fabric of our city, and we need to be able to. Right now, we continue to fight back. And I'm very glad that we have a mayor, that is fighting back against the Trump administration and ICE agents, and obviously the executive order yesterday, is a good. We were able to bring all the surrounding mayors from across this, Massachusetts to come, and it was a. I was there yesterday, and it was hard to feel optimistic when everything is going on, right? But I know we have leaders and residents, and I'm not talking about just leaders in terms of elected officials. That's important that we have leaders in place that support and are fighting back against ICE. But our neighborhoods, our residents, it's incredible how. Again, yesterday, Rosendale, how Rosendale came together to support this one individual. The power is within community, and it's going to be extremely difficult to see, the next 3 years or the next week, the next day, right? You just don't know what's going to happen. But we need to do everything possible here in the city of Boston that we're to make sure that we're prepared for what's to come. Assume worse. Right, we can't expect anything from this administration right now. So, and we're going to be a target. We're not a Republican state, right? So, they're gonna target Massachusetts. They're gonna target Boston. They're obviously gonna target our mayor, who's been very vocal. And I don't think they like how vocal she's been, right? And the actions she's been able to take. So, they're gonna continue to target us. But I think Boston has always historically, we've been in this position where we lead. It doesn't mean we get it perfect, but we fight for our own, and that includes our immigrant community, our immigrant residents, and we're gonna continue doing that. This executive order has so many different parts to it, but making sure that city property and city land, our schools, our libraries. Our safe havens. And
what about churches?
And churches, and I mean our faith leaders, in general. Again, part of this community have stepped up, right? And I mean our faith leaders, I think, have always stepped up, and I don't think they get enough credit for the trauma, the all the things that they see, and handle with love and care, and obviously with prayer, right? But our faith leaders across the city, have stepped up, and we're gonna need them to continue going through this.
But I want to know, is those safe havens, right? Is sanctuaries one of those places that are a safe haven? Now, you may or may not know that in the executive order.
So the executive order, I mean, I'd have to look into that. I think my understanding is the city-owned property, right? Okay. And so it's city-owned property because that's what we have authority over, right? Okay. So in terms of private property, we don't really. But I think, again, our faith leaders have come together and are continuing to come together to make sure that because they're not a city-owned property, that's not going to be part of their mission, right? And their mission, from the ones who I've spoken to, is that they want their spaces and their churches to be sanctuaries for people to be able to come, slightly feel comfortable, right? I don't think there's any, especially I think if you're an undocumented resident, I don't think there's a place right now that you can feel comfortable in, right? But we need to continue to push for that. It's again extremely scary times, especially for those who have to deal with this.
The truth of the matter is, from my perspective, it really is because there were 2 American citizens that were killed.
Citizens.
So it's not even about undocumented.
Exactly.
It's about people of color, period. Right? I'm not safe. Nobody's safe.
No, I'm telling you right now, driving here, I'm looking. Right? I mean, it's a real thing. I mean, and again, I'm an American citizen now.
That doesn't mean anything.
Doesn't mean anything, right? And that's what's scary. Yeah. And it's so.
Keep talking.
No. It's extremely scary. We need to continue to step up. Again, I'm really proud of, in this situation, really proud of our mayor, who has stepped up to the plate, and protect residents, our Boston, and thinking about, again, fighting back against it. I think it's extremely important right now.
So with a few moments that we've got left, we touched on the school, right? We touched on the public safety, right? Are you still the chairs of those committees even in this term?
No, so under this term right now, I'm still the chair of public safety and criminal justice, which I'm very proud of.
To continue.
That's not something that you can just
do in one term.
And again, really looking at how to expand the collaboration. Really, again, not just meeting with the commissioner and the mayor and my colleagues, but the sheriffs, the DA, and like what's the collaboration here? And over the last several years, I mean, we've seen violence in terms of numbers, right? I want to be very intentional about my language here, go down. And those are things that we should be proud of. Now, do people feel safer is the question, right? And when I'm going around, I'm living right now in Roxbury, right? That's not the case, right? Huh. People don't feel safe going to the local grocery store. People don't feel, and this is, outside of just the ICE stuff, sure. Right? I mean, like that's another layer to it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But people don't. So we need to see, my focus is how do I invest in more community work, right? I think I moved to my to where I currently live there about a year ago. And for a month, I'm like, I don't even know who my neighbors are, right? And then if I want people to know who the neighbors are, I need to be, right? So there's little things that, block parties, community events, and being able to, there's a lot of community leaders who want to put on these spaces, local artists, right? Invest in on all of that, invest in our youth, programming for our seniors. Our seniors have been struggling, especially since the pandemic, with mental health, right? So we need to continue to invest in those type of programming. So I'm very happy to have public safety, and looking forward to there's going to be various challenges, but I'm looking forward to the work, right? And I am also, this year, I'm stepping into a new lane of being able to chair the Veterans Committee, and this is a committee that previously was held by our veteran on our council, Councilor Ed Flynn from District 2, who's done, I think, a tremendous work, him being a veteran himself, but just being able to take that committee and making sure that fighting for our veterans. He's my vice chair now. He wanted to make sure that he didn't want to continue chairing that. He wanted to mentor someone else to continue chairing that. And this is a new lane for me. Mm-hmm. But it's one that, again, I take this job extremely seriously. Mm-hmm. I pride myself in my professionalism, mm-hmm. and my work ethic. Mm-hmm. I'm looking to do good work on behalf of the veterans, mm-hmm. Who have given so much, mm-hmm. to this country, mm-hmm. And continue to now have returned and come back and, mm-hmm. and serving in different capacities. Mm-hmm. Whether that's again on the city council as Councilor Flynn, but teachers, police officers, firefighters. Business, you name it. Right. So, but they go through, our veterans go through a lot, and there's a lot of resources out there, and a lot of them don't know about them, right? And that's a job, especially I think I want to be intentional about also like our Black veterans, and making sure that they know the resources that are available. And I'm looking forward to, again, under Councilor Flynn's mentorship, to really step up and deliver for our veterans here in the city of Boston.
I look forward to talking with you more about that as a Black veteran.
Thank you for your service.
To God be the glory. But I definitely want to talk to you about that, because quite candidly, and I'll just say this briefly, because I talked to Matthew Mathilier, who is in the service, right? And I was actually kicked out of the military because I contracted HIV, and this is when it was a death sentence. Now you can live because it's chronic management, but at that time it was scary, so they just said get out, cut off my benefits, and my discharge was not honorable, not dishonorable, wow. Not medical. It was uncharacterized. Wow. So now I have to go through a whole process of getting my upgrade discharge status to get my benefits that they cut off immediately. So, and I'm not the only one.
Yeah,
so I definitely look forward to talking with you.
Well, let's connect.
More about
Absolutely.
that. But real quickly, I want to say, because and I got to touch this real quick, the process with the election of the president of the city council, that was really disheartening for a lot of people whom thought that Brian Worrell was going to be that, thought he was competent, right? He's done a great job in terms of across the aisle. He's, and just on the level of his expertise, and to be able to garner the votes, but then literally one vote, right? And people who committed to giving him votes. And that's kind of set up now, again, this kind of loyalty because of how things manifested that night before, even up until the day, people jockeying for positions, and a black man was now kicked out and lost the opportunity to be able to really continue to, set the tone for these next 2 years.
Yeah. I don't even know where to start there. I'm very aware of, again, I'm in community, and, people reach out to me. I know how disappointed many residents were, especially our black communities, right? Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan. The city council presidency in general, this is my first time that it's gone like this.
Yeah.
The first time around,
yeah.
I was very proud to, support Roofsy, and, she became our city council president. There was no none of this,
yeah.
And I don't really know where that came from, it's now become more of a public process where I think now residents, are in tune with what's happening, and are now advocating for it, right? And supporting. What I will say is that the city council presidency happens right after our break. Right. It's the first meeting.
You're inaugurated. Next thing business is who's going to be the president.
And I think that's, and I'm trying to think of even 2 years from now, whenever, right? How do we? I think there was not enough communication happening.